Travis Hunter showing up in Minnesota created a question that felt bigger than it should have. Because in today's NFL, players don't just appear somewhere, there's usually a reason. And for a moment, it looked like the Minnesota Vikings might be making a move for one of the most unique players in football, Travis Hunter. But the truth? Much simpler and much more revealing. Let's start with the context. Hunter is seen courtside at an NBA game in Minnesota. Immediately, speculation begins. Trade talks, team meetings, medical evaluations. In the NFL, especially during the offseason, proximity creates narratives. And Hunter isn't just any player. He's a two-way talent, cornerback and wide receiver, a rare piece. So naturally, fans connect dots. Then the reality hits. No trade talks, no Vikings involvement, just a brand connection. Adidas tied to Anthony Edwards, a marketing trip. Nothing more. The obvious narrative is simple. Fans got ahead of themselves. There was never a deal. Hunter remains with the Jacksonville Jaguars, Norse. End of story. But that's not where the real insight is, because the reaction itself tells you something important about how teams and fans view a player like Hunter. Let's go deeper. Hunter isn't just evaluated like a normal corner or receiver. He's evaluated as a concept, versatility, unpredictability, scheme flexibility. And those traits create imagination. That's why the idea of him in Minnesota felt exciting, because under a creative system, a player like Hunter doesn't just fill a role, he expands the playbook. Defensively, imagine him in a system run by Brian Flores. Pressure heavy, disguised coverages, constant movement. Hunter fits that, a corner who can adapt, react, and handle multiple assignments. Offensively, under Kevin O'Connell's era. Now you're talking about situational usage. Red zone packages, third down mismatches, unpredictable alignments. Clipping moment number 1. Travis Hunter isn't just a player, he's a play-calling advantage. But here's where reality steps in. Hunter isn't fully that player yet, because last season changed something. Injury, limited games, a shift in how he'll likely be used moving forward. The Jaguars drafted him as a two-way weapon, but after the knee issue, there's a strong possibility he becomes more specialized. More corner than receiver, more controlled usage, less experimental deployment. And that matters, because the value of Hunter depends on how much of both roles he can realistically handle. Now here's the hidden factor. This situation highlights how teams think about risk versus creativity. A fully healthy, fully utilized Travis Hunter is a strategic advantage, but a limited version? He becomes harder to justify in a dual role system, because splitting responsibilities increases physical demand. Injury risk rises, and consistency can drop. So teams have to decide, do you maximize versatility or protect durability? Clipping moment number 2. The more positions Hunter plays, the more valuable he becomes, and the more fragile that value gets. Now let's identify the turning point. It's not this offseason. It's how the Jaguars deploy him in 2026. If they lean back into two-way usage, controlled but present, then his value explodes. League-wide, every team starts thinking about how to use him. But if they limit him primarily to corner, then his identity shifts. Still valuable, still impactful, but no longer unique in the same way. And that changes how teams approach him entirely. Clipping moment number 3. Hunter's future won't be defined by talent. It'll be defined by how many roles he's allowed to keep. Now zoom out. What does this mean for Minnesota? Nothing directly, but conceptually it reveals something. Teams are constantly searching for players who create advantages beyond structure, not just execute plays, but change how plays are designed. Hunter fits that profile, which is why even a random appearance sparks trade speculation. And for Jacksonville, this is the real challenge. They don't just need to develop Hunter, they need to define him. Because until that decision is made, corner, receiver, or both, his full impact remains theoretical. In the end, Travis Hunter being in Minnesota wasn't about a trade. It wasn't about the Vikings. It was about perception. Because when a player is unique enough, people start imagining possibilities. And in the NFL, those possibilities often matter just as much as reality, until the moment a team decides exactly what that player is supposed to be. And with Travis Hunter, that decision is still coming. For a moment, it felt real. One courtside appearance, one viral photo, and suddenly Travis Hunter in purple didn't sound crazy anymore. Because when a rare two-way talent shows up in your city out of nowhere, Fans don't assume coincidence, they assume movement, especially when that city belongs to the Minnesota Vikings. The speculation hit fast. Was this a visit, a meeting, a quiet check in before something bigger? Because let's be honest, if Hunter were ever available, Minnesota would make sense. A creative coaching staff, a defense that thrives on versatility, an offense that could weaponize him in ways most teams wouldn't even try. It felt like one of those moments where a rumor starts small and turns real overnight. But then it collapsed just as quickly. Because the truth wasn't football, it was business. Hunter wasn't in Minnesota for a trade. He wasn't meeting with the Vikings. He wasn't exploring anything. He was there for an Adidas shoot. That's it. Connected to Anthony Edwards, not the Vikings, not the National Football League, just brand work. And just like that, the illusion disappeared. But here's the turning point. The fact that people believed it, that matters because it says everything about how Hunter is viewed right now. Even after a rookie season cut short by injury, even after playing just 7 games, teams and fans still see the upside, still see the possibility. A corner who can lock down one side of the field, a receiver who can flip a game in a single play. That kind of profile doesn't stay quiet. It follows him everywhere, even into an NBA arena. And that's why this moment isn't as meaningless as it looks. Because while there's no deal, no discussions, no connection to Minnesota, there is something else. Expectation. Because when your presence alone can spark trade rumors, you're not just a player anymore. You're an idea. And ideas in the NFL, they spread fast, especially when they involve a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars still figuring out how to fully use him. That's the real tension here. Not where he was sitting, but what he represents. Because if Hunter ever does become available, this won't be the last time a random appearance turns into a rumor. It'll be the beginning of a bidding war. And next time, it might not be about an Adidas shoot. It might be real. That's why this moment sticks, because even when nothing happened, it still felt like something could. For a moment, it felt real. One courtside appearance, one viral photo, and suddenly Travis Hunter in purple didn't sound crazy anymore. Because when a rare two-way talent shows up in your city out of nowhere, fans don't assume coincidence, they assume movement, especially when that city belongs to the Minnesota Vikings. The speculation hit fast. Was this a visit, a meeting, a quiet check-in before something bigger? Because let's be honest, if Hunter were ever available, Minnesota would make sense. A creative coaching staff, a defense that thrives on versatility, an offense that could weaponize him in ways most teams wouldn't even try. It felt like one of those moments where a rumor starts small and turns real overnight. But then it collapsed just as quickly. Because the truth wasn't football, it was business. Hunter wasn't in Minnesota for a trade. He wasn't meeting with the Vikings. He wasn't exploring anything. He was there for an Adidas shoot.